Episode of the day. It's a late night. Dinner is cooking. I can smell it. We got Tucker Carlson and Stephen A. Sund. Now, I talked about this gentleman before. He is the gentleman who was the chief of the Capitol Police, and he maintained that position until after January 6th. His story is incredible, and in some ways kind of sad, and at other times pretty scary. So the things he went through on January 6th, but not just in terms of what happened in terms of the protest, what happened in terms of him interacting with his commanding officers, being withheld support, being pretty much kept in the dark, and having to watch his men have to deal with a situation that they've never had on their hands before. It's very, very interesting that this would happen to someone like this. In this clip, Tucker Carlson is asking him about federal agents being in the crowd at January 6th. Now, I like this clip because Stephen is balanced. He's not conspiratorial. He's not off the rails with it. You know, he's not just saying yes. He's not just saying no. What he's saying is the facts. That's the thing. He is very highly trained. He understands the system perfectly. He understands the chain of command perfectly. He understands exactly how things would happen in regards to federal agents being in the crowd. He knows when they wouldn't be there. If they were, why would they be there? And he's privy to certain information. So this is not conspiracy. This is just facts. A lot of people think that this is complete conspiracy, and they present it as such, as a big inside job. Stephen is not coming from that side of things. He's just coming with the facts, which in some ways are more chilling, more exposing than any conspiracy that we can make up. Now, let's get into that clip. Before I do, of course, I have to bring you to IamCoachColin.com. This is a Soul Not For Sale shirt. You can get that in any size you want. Then we have the Certified Pure Blood shirt. For those of you that survived the pandemic and made it out unscathed and untainted, this is your certificate of achievement. And then we have my personal favorite, Public Enemy #1. I say it, and I'll say it again. If you don't know who this gentleman is, Google the World Economic Forum, Google Agenda 2030, Google You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy, and you will understand why I branded this gentleman Public Enemy #1. All of that's available on IamCoachColin.com, and if you want 10% off of anything you saw and more, all you got to do is put in the discount code IamCoachColin. All capital letters, all one word, one L in the name Colin, and that gets you 10% off. And if you've chosen to do that with us already, I really appreciate it. You have no idea. Thank you so much, so much. Now let's get into this clip. Ooh.
Just be plain clothes, plain clothes to blend in. So that wouldn't be unusual, and it'd be just standard police work. It'd be good police work. So coming into January 6th, and I talk about it in the book with the fact that shortly after January 6th, I'm driving through Loudoun County. I just talked to somebody from the Hill, and I get a call from overseas, and it's press. I don't remember what it was. It's somebody from Great Britain, and they started asking me about feds in the crowd. And I was like, no, I would have been told. I said, no, we're getting word that there was feds in the crowd. And I said, no, I would have been told. I've got lots of friends with the Bureau. They all have my cell phone number. They would have told me. Thinking about that, and Jill Sanborn's testimony in 2021 where she said they were taking overt action to keep certain people from coming to January 6th to Washington, D.C. That's big for FBI to start taking overt action. I mean, that's not covert, overt. That's a big deal. Fast forward to February of this year, 2023, in the GAO report that says on January 3rd, the FBI was tracking 4 domestic terrorists that were talking about coming to Washington, D.C., the Washington Field Office, their AOR, Area of Responsibility. By January 6th, they were tracking 18 or 19, it's in the GAO report, domestic terrorists. So think about that. They have 18 or 19 domestic terrorists coming to this event. So of course they're going to have resources on them, and they're not, you're not going to be just putting one agent. You're going to have multiples. So it'd be multiple with that. And I don't know how many they actually had coming there. So that would be regular standard police work. So I wouldn't be surprised by that, but not to share that in the intelligence, that's concerning.
So, I mean, it seems like common sense suggests anyway that you would have to tell the chief of Capitol Police that, hey, we've got our guys in the crowd. Like, just because, I mean, you would want to know the difference, correct?
You would absolutely want to know the difference. And, deconfliction, you want to have things
right.
like that. A lot of the folks will already know there's a lot of standard procedures for ways you deconflict so you don't have blue on blue type of situations. You'll have that. I will say this and just really quick.
So that would just to, because you have perspective, that would be the conventional way the by the book way to do it. FBI would call you and say, hey, we're worried about people in the crowd and we've got our guys there too. Here's who they are.
Yeah, so just to deconflict operations, they wouldn't necessarily call me. They might call my deputy chief that's in charge of my intel and their
sure, but they would
people.
call Capitol Police.
You would coordinate. You coordinate with DC Police. You'd coordinate with Park Police. You'd coordinate with Secret Service, just so everyone kind of knew what was going on. And really quickly, I do want to say this. Nowhere do I want to imply or indicate that I feel that agents instigated this or in any way like that. I'm never saying that. I haven't said that. And a lot of these agencies came to my defense on January 6th, FBI,
yes.
Secret Service, stuff like that. So we just want to make sure that's clear. But there would have been some coordination. And when you look at it and you think with the intelligence coming in, if you think there's 19 domestic terrorists coming to Washington, D.C., somehow that would have been included in some type of report. And when you look at the FBI's procedures, policies and procedures, and again, go online, the Attorney General's guidance for domestic operations of the FBI specifically says the FBI is to do an assessment which includes intelligence assessments of events that they're identifying as being the target of possible threats and possible violence. I think that would have been the United States Capitol on January 6th. Look through that document. I outlined it in the book and see all the repeated failure after failure after failure of their own procedures to start identifying intelligence and making the proper notifications.
So, but it does raise, and I don't have the answer to this question, and I hope I don't ever pretend that I do, but it does raise questions about the behavior of some of the people in the crowd who were instigating others to break the law, and who weren't arrested. And, given our facial recognition software capabilities, hard to believe they can't be found. And I would specifically cite a man called Ray Epps, who's now a hero on the left and funded by the Democratic Party, et cetera. But take the politics out of it. What is that? Here you have a guy on camera repeatedly saying, we're going to the Capitol.
We need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol.
And he's not in jail when people who didn't go into the Capitol are in jail? What do you make of that?
Again, that's something I actually addressed in the book. It's funny. There's a lot in here. So my concern with that, and I look at it from a chief of police point of view, is you have somebody that's down, and I believe he's right near the old executive office building on the 5th, the day before January 6th, talking to a group of people, talking about, we have to get into the building. We have to get in the building. And then the next day to see him at what's called the Pennsylvania Avenue Gate. It's one of the two fence lines I had down at the West Front. And he's there, and he clearly sees the banner, the metal crowd control barriers that are up with the signs saying restricted, so he knows that's a restricted area. And he's up there, and you see him lean in, and he whispers in somebody's ear, and he covers his mouth in such a way so you can't read his lips or anything. Whispers in somebody's ear, and that person moments later is attacking my officers. That's suspicious as hell to me. It raised a lot of concerns.
What is that?
And what's interesting is I believe...
and that's verified. The person into whose ear he whispered...
Yeah, I think if you watch the video, you see that, and that person immediately go and start pulling on the gate and start fighting with the officers. And what's interesting is I believe he went on 60 Minutes. And on 60 Minutes, what he said was he went up to the officer and he told that officer, these officers are on our side. Don't hurt these officers. I believe that was pretty much not verbatim. But don't hurt these officers. They're on our side. Don't hurt these officers. Well, if that's the case, why would you cover your mouth and not yell it to everybody? Because it didn't seem like that protester was the only one that was possibly going to be hurting the officers. You had a whole bunch of people next to him. Why wouldn't you tell it to the whole group?
I don't know. I know that Epps is being encouraged by partisan Democrats to sue people who raise these questions, but they're fair questions, and I'm going to raise them anyway. How, given that tape, could the January 6th committee defend Ray Epps, which they did? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I'm having trouble answering that one. I don't know.
Interesting. How many federal agents, officers, assets, people connected with federal agencies, do you think were in the crowd? Do we have any idea?
I really have no idea.
More or fewer than normal, would you say?
Well, if you have, again, going back to what I'm reading now in the GAO report with 19 domestic terrorists possibly coming in, I've never seen anything like that in Washington D.C. So you may have a larger than usual presence.
Amazing.
Wow. Here's the thing, right? A lot of people, people who watch mainstream media and stuff like that, they think that that's a complete conspiracy. Joe Rogan and Jim Gaffigan had a talk about this. And he was like, you think there was agents in the crowd? Like, he was like this mystified by that possibility. This is just the facts. The way he's presenting it all, it's like if they were tracking domestic terrorists, they have to have agents in the crowd. That has to be a thing. 19 of them. 19, which means you would think, I don't know, at least one per person. So you'd say like 19 agents. Maybe it's 2 per person, so you could keep different eyes on the person. So now we're doubling that. We're in the 30s. We're almost in the 40s. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it works, according to Stephen A. Sund, who, from what I can see, is very sincere. Very sincere. And you can tell, even as he's talking about this, he even mentions the fact that he wants to make sure that people don't misunderstand him when he's talking about this, that he is not saying that these agents are the ones that incited everything. Because, like he said, they came to his rescue. They spoke up for him. Like, this guy is in such a bad situation. Above him, people are withholding the National Guard. There are people in the crowd he's not being told about. Domestic terrorists that he's not been told about. It was such a crazy situation. And then on top of that, all the regular people who showed up. And just trying to deal with it as one man and one team. Just completely in the dark from the sounds of things. Very scary situation for him. Very scary. And here's the thing that I'd like to ask. I wish I could ask him this question. I wish Tucker did. What constitutes a domestic terrorist? That's what I wonder. Because, when you hear that word, we all kind of go, we think of certain people. You know what I mean? I don't know. You hear basketball player, you think of a certain type of guy, right? Like, I don't know. Right? So what constitutes that? I would love to know, because I have a good feeling what constitutes that is just somebody who was being monitored by Facebook, because, the FBI had a little bit to do with Facebook, a little bit to do with Twitter. If you were saying wild things on the internet, somebody was either they weren't just suppressing people, they were kind of building files on people. So maybe it was just somebody who said a lot of things that were anti-state, anti-government, and now they're going to this protest. Maybe it was just someone that in their eyes, they're just a patriot. Maybe it was American citizens. I just wonder what constitutes that. I really do. I know you hear domestic terrorists and you're like, of course they were citizens, but maybe not. It could have been someone who was foreign, who's in the country. But I have a good feeling it was people from America who were just branded as domestic terrorists. And that becomes scary too. Because, again, what's the criteria? Are you a terrorist? Are you watching this and they're like, well, you fall under this category now? I don't know. Interesting to think about. Really tough situation for Ray Epps. And again, as you hear him talk throughout this interview, and I really do suggest that you watch this interview, as you hear him talk throughout this whole thing, he seems so sincere. So sincere. A guy who didn't want to step down, but he didn't feel taken care of by his higher ups. Wanted to do the best he could for his people. Has somebody die on his watch, which is just for the rest of his life. He'll feel that. That never goes away. And now he's known as, if the mainstream media gets to take the ball and run with it, he's known as the man who dropped the ball in this situation. When in reality, as we hear this interview, he did every single thing he could to make sure that this situation was neutralized, contained, and kept in order as soon as possible. And there's just nobody helping him. And then we hear this. And just so you know, and I'm making this video because it's not a conspiracy. The way things work is there had to be agents in the crowd. There had to be. I mean, let's not even get into Ray Epps. Everybody knows about Ray Epps. The fact that the government was defending this guy so much. The fact that I think Tucker brought it up a little jokingly, a little sarcastically, but I'm pretty sure Ray Epps may be suing Tucker Carlson for what he said about him. Tucker Carlson did a whole cover on that gentleman. But again, Stephen A. Sun brings up such a good point. Why are you covering your mouth saying something to one guy that should be said to everybody? Don't hurt those officers. Maybe everybody should say that. Maybe you're telling one guy who needed to be protected. One guy who you knew, who maybe you worked with that, I don't know. Who knows? All alleged, of course. I identify as Tucker Carlson, but I don't want the lawsuits, But very interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think of that? And show this to anybody. Anybody. Is not even me talking, just that clip. People who think that there was no agents. The way things work, they were tracking domestic terrorists. That means there had to be agents in the crowd. If those people who they were tracking went into the crowd, they had to go into the crowd as well. 19 of them, there was at least, and just me saying, there's at least 30 agents in the crowd. I don't know. Very interesting. This guy's dealing with agents in the crowd. I've said it before, dealing with agents in the crowd. Nobody's helping him. No National Guard. And now it kind of makes sense when you see these officers helping people around and walking with them and letting them into rooms. Of course they are. They're so outnumbered. They're like, what else are we going to do? If we don't help them into these rooms, are they just going to break into these rooms? We have no idea. Now, I'm not on the side of saying this was some kind of crazy insurrection, but at the same time, these guys had no support. None at all. So the only tactic to use at that point is like, okay, if they're being civil, let's be civil too. That's it. Because if there's hundreds of guys and you think that you're just going to bat a few of them in the head and yell at them, well, you might have to take on 500 people. And that's not going to end well, right? So this whole situation makes so much more sense with this interview in mind. So much more sense. God bless Tucker Carlson. If you haven't liked the video already, like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. It's all down there somewhere. You know where it is. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. And other than that, I am out.